Dilophosaurus is a genus of theropod dinosaurs that lived in what is now North America during the early Jurassic, about 186 million years ago. 3 skeletons were discovered in northern Arizona in 1940, and the 2 best preserved were collected in 1942. The most complete specimen became the holotype of a new species in the genus Megalosaurus, named M. wetherilli by Samuel P. Wells in 1954. Wells found a larger skeleton belonging to the same species in 1964. Realizing it bore crests on its skull, he assigned the species to the new genus Dilophosaurus in 1970 as Dilophosaurus wetherilli. The genus name means two-crested lizard, and the species name honors John Wetherill, a Navajo counselor. Further specimens have since been found, including an infant. Fossil footprints have also been attributed to the animal, including resting traces. Another species, Dilophosaurus sinensis from China, was named in 1993, but was later found to belong to the genus Sinosaurus. At about 7 men, 23 ft, in length, with a weight of about 400 kg, 880 league, Dilophosaurus was one of the earliest large predatory dinosaurs and the largest known land animal in North America at the time. It was slender and lightly built, and the skull was proportionally large but delicate. The snout was narrow, and the upper jaw had a gap or kink below the nostril. It had a pair of longitudinal arched crests on its skull. Their complete shape is unknown, but they were probably enlarged by keratin. The mandible was slender and delicate at the front, but deep at the back. The teeth were long, curved, thin, and compressed sideways. Those in the lower jaw were much smaller than those of the upper jaw. Most of the teeth had serrations at their front and back edges. The neck was long, and its vertebrae were hollow and very light. The arms were powerful, with a long and slender upper arm bone. The hands had 4 fingers. The first was short but strong and bore a large claw. The 2 following fingers were longer and slenderer with smaller claws. The 4th was vestigial. The thigh bone was massive, the feet were stout, and the toes bore large claws. Dilophosaurus has been considered a member of the family Dilophosauridae, along with Dracovenator, a group placed between the Chelophysidae and later theropods, but some researchers have not found support for this grouping. Dilophosaurus would have been active and bipedal and may have hunted large animals. It could also have fed on smaller animals and fish. Due to the limited range of movement and shortness of the forelimbs, the mouth may instead have made first contact with prey. The function of the crests is unknown. They were too weak for battle, but may have been used in visual display, such as species recognition and sexual selection. It may have grown rapidly, attaining a growth rate of 30 to 35 kg, 66 to 77 lb per year early in life. The holotype specimen had multiple paleopathologies, including healed injuries and signs of a developmental anomaly. Dilophosaurus is known from the Kayenta Formation and lived alongside dinosaurs such as Scutellosaurus and Saurosaurus. It was designated as the state dinosaur of Connecticut based on tracks found there. Dilophosaurus was featured in the novel Jurassic Park and its movie adaptation, where it was given the fictional abilities to spit venom and expand a neck frill, and was depicted as smaller than the real animal. Dilophosaurus was one of the earliest large predatory dinosaurs, a medium-sized theropod, though small compared to some of the later theropods. It was also the largest known land animal of North America during the early Jurassic. Slender and lightly built, its size was comparable to that of a brown bear. The largest known specimen weighed about 400 kilograms, 880 lb, measured about 7 meters, 23 ft, in length, and its skull was 590 millimeters, 23.14 in long. The smaller holotype specimen weighed about 283 kilograms, 624 lb, was 6.03 meters, 19 ft 9.12 in long, with a hip height of about 1.36 meters, 4 ft 5.122 in, and its skull was 523 millimeters, 1 ft 8.122 in long. A resting trace of a theropod similar to Dilophosaurus and Liliensternus has been interpreted by some researchers as showing impressions of feathers around the belly and feet, similar to down. Other researchers instead interpret these impressions as sedimentological artifacts created as the dinosaur moved, though this interpretation does not rule out that the trackmaker could have borne feathers. Dilophosaurus had 4 teeth in each premaxilla, 12 in each maxilla, and 17 in each dentary. The teeth were generally long, thin, and recurved, with relatively small bases. They were compressed sideways, oval in cross-section at the base, lenticular, lens-shaped above, and slightly concave on their outer and inner sides. The largest tooth of the maxilla was either in or near the fourth alveolus, and the height of the tooth crowns decreased hindwards. The first tooth of the maxilla pointed slightly forwards from its alveolus because the lower border of the premaxillar process, which projected backward towards the maxilla, was upturned. The teeth of the dentary were much smaller than those of the maxilla. The third or fourth tooth in the dentary of Dilophosaurus and some Chelophysoids was the largest there, and seems to have fit into the subnarial gap of the upper jaw. Most of the teeth had serrations on the front and back edges, which were offset by vertical grooves and were smaller at the front. About 31 to 41 serrations were on the front edges, and 29 to 33 were on the back. At least the second and third teeth of the premaxilla had serrations, but the fourth tooth did not. The teeth were covered in a thin layer of enamel, 0.1 to 0.15 mm, 0.0039 to 0.0059 in, thick, which extended far towards their bases. The alveoli were elliptical to almost circular, and all were larger than the bases of the teeth they contained, which may therefore have been loosely held in the jaws. Though the number of alveoli in the dentary would seem to indicate that the teeth were very crowded, they were rather far apart due to the larger size of their alveoli. The jaws contained replacement teeth at various stages of eruption. The interdental plates between the teeth were very low. Reconstructed skull in semi-profile, American Museum of Natural History. Note the subnarial gap, large upper teeth, and slender mandible. Wells found that Dilophosaurus did not have a powerful bite due to weakness caused by the subnarial gap. He thought that it used its front premaxillary teeth for plucking and tearing rather than biting, and the maxillary teeth further back for piercing and slicing. He thought that it was probably a scavenger rather than a predator, and that if it did kill large animals, it would have done so with its hands and feet rather than its jaws. Wells did not find evidence of cranial kinesis in the skull of Dilophosaurus, a feature that allows individual bones of the skull to move in relation to each other. In 1986, the paleontologist Robert T. Backer instead found Dilophosaurus, with its massive neck and skull and large upper teeth, to have been adapted for killing large prey and strong enough to attack any early Jurassic herbivores. In 1988, Paul dismissed the idea that Dilophosaurus was a scavenger and claimed that strictly scavenging terrestrial animals are a myth. He stated that the snout of Dilophosaurus was better braced than had been thought previously, and that the very large, slender maxillary teeth were more lethal than the claws. Paul suggested that it hunted large animals such as prosauropods, and that it was more capable of snapping small animals than other theropods of a similar size. A 2005 beam theory study by the paleontologist François Terrien and colleagues found that the bite force in the mandible of Dilophosaurus decreased rapidly hindwards in the tooth throw. This indicates that the front of the mandible, with its upturned chin, rosette of teeth and strengthened symphyseal region, similar to Spinosaurids, was used to capture and manipulate prey, probably of relatively smaller size. The properties of its mandibular symphysis were similar to those of felids and crocodilians that use the front of their jaws to deliver a powerful bite when subduing prey. The loads exerted on the mandibles were consistent with struggle of small prey, which may have been hunted by delivering slashing bites to wound it, and then captured with the front of the jaws after being too weakened to resist. The prey may then have been moved further back into the jaws, where the largest teeth were located, and killed by slicing bites, similar to some crocodilians, with the sideways compressed teeth. The authors suggested that if Dilophosaurus indeed fed on small prey, possible hunting packs would have been of limited size. Milner and paleontologist James I. Kirkland suggested in 2007 that Dilophosaurus had features that indicate it may have eaten fish. They pointed out that the ends of the jaws were expanded to the sides, forming a rosette of interlocking teeth, similar to those of Spinosaurids, known to have eaten fish, and gharials, which is the modern crocodile that eats the most fish. The nasal openings were also retracted back on the jaws, similar to spinosaurids, which have even more retracted nasal openings, and this may have limited water splashing into the nostrils during fishing. Both groups also had long arms with well-developed claws, which could help when catching fish. Lake Dixie, a large lake that extended from Utah to Arizona and Nevada, would have provided abundant fish in the post-cataclysmic, biologically more impoverished world that followed the Triassic-Jurassic extinction event, wherein about 3/4 of life on Earth vanished, 5 to 15 million years before Dilophosaurus appeared. In 2018, Marsh and Rowe reported that the holotype specimen of the sauropodomorph Ceratosaurus bore possible tooth marks scattered across the skeleton that may have been left by Dilophosaurus, since Tarsus was too small to have produced them, scavenging the specimen after it died. The positions of the bones may also have been disturbed by scavenging. An example of such marks can be seen on the left scapula, which has an oval depression on the surface of its upper side and a large hole on the lower front end of the right tibia. The quarry where the holotype and paratype specimens of Ceratosaurus were excavated also contained a partial immature Dilophosaurus specimen. Marsh and Rowe suggested in 2020 that many of the features that distinguished Dilophosaurus from earlier theropods were associated with increased body size and macropredation, preying on large animals. While Marsh and Rowe agreed that Dilophosaurus could have fed on fish and small prey in the fluvial system in its environment, they pointed out that the articulation between the premaxilla and maxilla of the upper jaw was immobile and much more robust than previously thought, and that large-bodied prey could have been grasped and manipulated with the forelimbs during predation and scavenging. They considered the large bite marks on Ceratosaurus specimens alongside shed teeth and the presence of a Dilophosaurus specimen within the same quarry as support for this idea. In a 2021 article, paleontologist Matthew A. Brown and Rowe stated that these remains showed that Dilophosaurus had jaws strong enough to puncture bone. The fleshy air sacs from its respiratory system that grew into the vertebrae both strengthened and lightened the skeleton and allowed unidirectional airflow through its lungs, similar to birds and crocodiles, and thereby more oxygen than a bidirectional respiratory system of mammals, wherein the air flows in and out of the lungs. Unidirectional breathing indicates relatively high metabolic rates and therefore high levels of activity, indicating that Dilophosaurus was likely a fast, agile hunter. Brown and Rowe considered Dilophosaurus to have been an apex predator in its ecosystem and not a scavenger. Dilophosaurus is known from the Kayenta Formation, which dates to the Sinemurian-Toarcian stages of the early Jurassic, approximately 196 to 186 million years ago. 187–190 Maya has also been suggested, and the age of the Kayenta is considered complex. As Dilophosaurus is known from the base to the middle of the formation, which is Pliensbachian in age, the taxon had a chronostratigraphic range of 15 million years. The Kayenta Formation is part of the Glen Canyon group that includes formations in northern Arizona, parts of southeastern Utah, western Colorado, and northwestern New Mexico. It is composed mostly of two facies, one dominated by siltstone deposition and the other by sandstone. The siltstone facies are found in much of Arizona, while the sandstone facies are present in areas of northern Arizona, southern Utah, western Colorado, and northwestern New Mexico. The formation was primarily deposited by rivers, with the siltstone facies as the slower, more sluggish part of the river system. Kayenta Formation deposition was ended by the encroaching dune field that would become the Navajo sandstone. The environment was seasonally dry, with sand dunes migrating in and out of the wet environments where animals lived, and has been likened to a river oasis, a waterway lined with conifers and surrounded by sand. According to Navajo myth, the carcasses of slain monsters were beaten into the earth, but were impossible to obliterate, and fossils have traditionally been interpreted as their remains. While Navajo people have helped paleontologists locate fossils since the 19th century, traditional beliefs suggest that the ghosts of the monsters remain in their partially buried corpses and have to be kept there through potent rituals. Likewise, some worry that the bones of their relatives would be dug up along with dinosaur remains and that removing fossils shows disrespect to the past lives of these beings. In 2005, the historian Adrienne Mayer stated Wells had noted that during the original excavation of Dilophosaurus, the Navajo Williams disappeared from the excavation after some days, and speculated this was because Williams found the detailed work with fine brushes beneath his dignity. Mayer instead pointed out that Navajo men do occupy themselves with detailed work, such as jewelry and painting, and that the explanation for Williams's departure may instead have been traditional anxiety as the skeletons emerged and were disturbed. Mayer also pointed to an incident in the 1940s when a Navajo man helped excavate a Pentaceratops skeleton as long as he did not have to touch the bones, but left the site when only a few inches of dirt were left covering them. In a 1994 book, Wells said Williams had come back some days later with two Navajo women saying, "That's no man's work, that's squaw's work." Dilophosaurus was featured in the 1990 novel Jurassic Park by the writer Michael Crichton and its 1993 movie adaptation by the director Steven Spielberg. The Dilophosaurus of Jurassic Park was acknowledged as the only serious departure from scientific veracity in the movie's making-of book, and as the most fictionalized of the movie's dinosaurs in a book about Stan Winston Studios, which created the animatronics effects. For the novel, Crichton invented the dinosaur's ability to spit venom, explaining how it was able to kill prey in spite of its seemingly weak jaws. The art department added another feature, a neck frill or cowl folded against its neck that expanded and vibrated as the animal prepared to attack, similar to that of the frill-necked lizard. To avoid confusion with the velociraptor as featured in the movie, Dilophosaurus was presented as only 1.2 meters, 4 ft tall, instead of its assumed true height of about 3.0 meters, 10 ft. Nicknamed the Spitter, the Dilophosaurus of the movie was realized through puppeteering and required a full body with 3 interchangeable heads to produce the actions required by the script. Separate legs were also constructed for a shot where the dinosaur hops by. Unlike most of the other dinosaurs in the movie, no computer-generated imagery was employed when showing the Dilophosaurus. The geologist J. Brett Bennington noted in 1996 that though Dilophosaurus probably did not have a frill and could not spit venom like in the movie, its bite could have been venomous, as has been claimed for the Komodo dragon. He found that adding venom to the dinosaur was no less allowable than giving a color to its skin, which is also unknown. If the dinosaur had a frill, there would have been evidence for this in the bones, in the shape of a rigid structure to hold up the frill, or markings at the places where the muscles used to move it were attached. He also added that if it did have a frill, it would not have used it to intimidate its meal, but rather a competitor. He speculated it may have responded to a character in the movie pulling a hood over his head. In a 1997 review of a book about the science of Jurassic Park, the paleontologist Peter Dodson likewise pointed out the wrong scale of the film's Dilophosaurus, as well as the improbability of its venom and frill. Bakker pointed out in 2014 that the movie's Dilophosaurus lacked the prominent notch in the upper jaw, and concluded that the movie makers had done a good job at creating a frightening chimera of different animals, but warned it could not be used to teach about the real animal. Brown and Marsh stated that while these traits were fictitious, they were made believable by being based on the biology of real animals. Wells himself was thrilled to see Dilophosaurus in Jurassic Park. He noted the inaccuracies, but found them minor points, enjoyed the movie, and was happy to find the dinosaur an internationally known actor. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and like for more videos.